After meeting super-powered triplets, a nerdy boy has to give up video games and fight alongside them to save the planet from a giant alien. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, Fearless. From 2020, inside Planet Master, the world's most difficult video game, a superhero called Lightspeed flies through the galaxy until he arrives on a rocky planet, where he is surprised by the Crusher, a type of giant alien armadillo. Wanting to defeat it, the superhero jumps on the creature and tries to stop it from closing its mouth with an energy spear. As this doesn't work, Captain Lightspeed jumps extremely high and shoots supersonic waves from his hands, but the Crusher takes no damage and manages to knock the hero down with a blow from his tail. Outside the game, a boy called Reed receives a call from his friends who are surprised to discover that he was the first to reach the penultimate level. While the boy's friends watch, Lightspeed says it's the day to bring the kids to work and summons his triplets Titus, Xander and Kira. Although the children have powers, they aren't strong enough to hurt the monster and Lightspeed has to fight alone. Even though he's smaller, the superhero can drive an energy lance through the monster's armor and defend himself against its tail with a force field. Using a gliding skateboard and electric shocks, Reed makes the monster walk until it almost falls into a crater. Suddenly, a huge jet of lava comes out of the hole and hits the boss, who is disintegrated in one fell swoop. Now that he has passed the penultimate stage, Dr. Arcanus appears with his ship and begins to threaten Lightspeed and his children. As the humanoid scientist has no power, the superhero says he will never be a threat and hits the ship with a shock beam, electrocuting the circuits and making the villain move away. Before going to the last stage, Reed thinks that Lightspeed's children will get in the way and decides to leave them in a nursery. There, an employee gives each person a palladium pacifier, which serves to neutralize their powers and prevent them from getting out of control. After the superhero leaves, Dr. Arcanus decides to break into the nursery with his assistant Fleech, who steals the triplets without anyone noticing. Inside his ship, Arcanus calls Lightspeed and tells him that he has created the Extrapolator, a machine capable of absorbing the abilities of babies and making him the most powerful being in the universe. While the two argue, Fleech prepares the absorption chamber, but the triplets manage to escape from the cage and crawl around the place without him noticing. Free to roam, the three of them start messing around where they shouldn't and injure Fleech quite badly, as well as ejecting him from the aircraft. With no one to watch them, the trio crawl into the escape pod and start pressing all the buttons possible, starting the ship that is ejected into space. Suddenly, the game pauses and a warning appears on the screen, asking if Reed accepts the consequences of the final level, but the boy doesn't take it seriously and confirms without even stopping to read. As soon as he does this, the triplets module passes through a wormhole and begins to fly towards Earth, crashing in the forest just behind Reed's house. Because of the sound of the bell, the boy doesn't hear the impact and goes to see his classmate Melanie, who has come to do some science work together. At a secret base, the military notice the UFO entering the atmosphere and General Jane decides to go there to investigate. After ending the connection with Lightspeed, Arcanus goes to the laboratory where he discovers that the babies have escaped, starting an interplanetary hunt. On Earth, Melanie and Reed start planning their schoolwork while the trio of babies start crawling inside. Seeing that her colleague hasn't written down any ideas, Melanie gets annoyed and decides to take a break, going to the bathroom while Reed is left alone. Suddenly, the back door opens and the boy goes to close it, not seeing the babies crawling underneath him. As he sits down in the armchair, Reed finally notices the triplets and begins to go into shock. Not knowing what to do, he tries to bring them back into the game via the television, but it obviously doesn't work. Seeing the children, Melanie asks who they are and Reed tries to explain that the three of them came from the video game, but the girl doesn't believe him. As the boy has no toys, Melanie goes to another room to look for something to distract them, leaving Reed alone to prevent them from destroying the house even more. When the girl returns, the young man again tries to explain that they came from the video game, but Melanie thinks he's making excuses for not doing the job and decides to leave. As she walks to the door, Titus starts clapping and releases a wave of energy that leaves the house without electricity, finally convincing Melanie that he was telling the truth. In space, Arcanus' ship enters the atmosphere and the general manages to detect it, contacting the Pentagon and putting all the country's military into action. Back at home, Melanie and Reed hide while they think of a way to send them back. Knowing it's not going to be easy, the girl calls her parents to let them know she'll be gone for a while. Wanting to get his children back, Captain Lightspeed decides to break into Arcanus' lair, tearing the door off and entering the place. As soon as he arrives, 9 drone warriors appear to confront the superhero, but they don't stand a chance against his powers. After defeating the robots, the captain tries to go to the next room and ends up being trapped in a palladium cage that neutralizes his powers. Now that he has no way of defending himself, an elevator begins to take him into a labyrinth full of super dangerous traps. Almost at the same time, Arcanus arrives on Earth and launches several drones that spread out to search for the triplets, as well as making his ship invisible so that no one can find it. The next morning, Reed wakes up and realizes he has a communicator device on Kira's back. Using the object, the boy manages to talk to Lightspeed, who believes he has taken his babies. After convincing him that he is innocent, Reed asks the captain to come and get them, but he is completely lost and tells the boy to keep them safe. Lightspeed warns that Arcanus wants to steal his children's powers and is already trying to track them down. The superhero then tells them that they must protect his babies, warning them that if the villain gets the powers, he will conquer planet Earth. As they discuss what to do, Titus picks up the communicator and slams it against the floor, breaking it and interrupting the Lightspeed transmission. With no time to lose, Reed and Melanie put everyone in the car and start driving away. As soon as they leave, Arcanus arrives at the house and begins to analyze the destruction the triplets have caused, noticing that they are getting stronger and stronger. On the road, Melanie and Reed discuss what to do when Titus starts to get angry, causing his hands to grow. Wanting to calm the babies down, Melanie turns on the radio and starts searching for a song, discovering that for some reason Lionel Richie's music makes everyone relax. A few miles ahead, the two stop at an army roadblock, where some soldiers in masks approach to investigate. While Reed shows the soldiers to the trunk, Titus gets out of the car and walks over to the military jeep, unlocking the handbrake and backing the car down the hill. When he reached the top of a second hill, the vehicle turned in the opposite direction and began to chase one of the soldiers, forcing Xander to create a shield around the man to avoid a collision. After almost being crushed, the soldier tries to explain to his partner what happened, but he obviously doesn't believe him. Suddenly, Titus lets go of his giant hand and grabs the military jeep with one hand, throwing it away. Afraid of being arrested, Reed and Melanie throw the babies into their car and drive off as fast as they can, leaving the highway and taking a trail. At the boys' house, General Jane is investigating the place when a soldier reports the event at the checkpoint, telling her about the super-powered alien babies. Off the road, Reed stops by a lake and starts to set up camp. Once the tent is pitched, Reed spends time playing with the triplets while Melanie tries to rebuild the communicator. After several hours working, Melanie comes to the conclusion that the pieces are too small and Reed asks Xander to create holograms of the pieces in a larger size. With his help, Melanie manages to rebuild the communicator while Lightspeed continues to try to escape from the labyrinth. In a corridor, the hero begins to be chased by a giant sphere that comes rolling after him, forcing him to run for his life. On Earth, Arcanus climbs into a water tower to scan the city, but his equipment suffers interference and he ends up calling a radio program, taking the opportunity to threaten the entire human race. At the campsite, Melanie tries to use the communicator and realizes that it's still not working, probably because the signal is weak. To solve this problem, she says they need to divert a communicator satellite, but it's impossible to do this without NASA's help. While they can't think of another solution, Melanie goes to make a sandwich while Reed plays with the children, getting closer and closer to the babies. Still in the labyrinth, Lightspeed arrives at a crusher's nest, where several of the monster's babies appear to attack him. At the camp, Reed continues to play with the children and ends up scaring Xander, who rolls away in a baby carriage made from his powers. Wanting to get the boy back, Reed and the others run into the car and start chasing him, ending up in the middle of a bridge. With a gigantic truck coming towards him, Xander materializes a giant teddy bear that holds the vehicle, causing the back of the truck to pass the lifeguard and almost fall off the bridge. While an Arcanus drone watches, Titus holds the wheel of the truck while Reed helps the driver out of the vehicle. Once everyone is safe, Titus lets go of the truck and starts clapping, which causes the vehicle to plummet and explode with all its cargo. To keep things under control, Reed decides to give everyone the palladium pacifier, which finally calms down. As soon as he does, General Jane arrives with her army and surrenders them all, taking the babies from Reed and Melanie's laps. Now that everyone is under arrest, the military closes the bridge and sets up camp to interrogate the teenagers. While the general is having a questioning session, Arcanus arrives on the scene and paralyzes all the soldiers with an extremely powerful weapon, giving the humans no chance to defend themselves. After the general leaves the tent, Reed approaches the window and sees that Arcanus is already leaving with the triplets. Although Melanie wants to go after him, Reed knows he can't do anything about it and begins to blame himself for everything. With Melanie's help, the boy manages to get his head together and comes up with the idea of using the army's satellite phone signal to activate the communicator. After stealing a motorcycle from the military, Reed starts driving towards Arcanus' ship, while Melanie hacks into the satellite phone. In the cave, Lightspeed starts fighting with the mini crushers and decides to use them as a platform to jump up to some rocks high above. Once he is safe, the captain receives a message from Melanie telling him that Arcanus is already with the babies, which makes the superhero even more motivated to escape. To do this, Lightspeed goes back to the mini crushers and grabs 2 of them by the tail, using the spines on his back to climb like Kratos with the Blade of Chaos. On the road, Reed sees the villain's ship taking off and begins to chase it, accelerating to the maximum and jumping with the motorcycle until he reaches the landing gear. In this way, they are taken into the ship, which begins to fly faster and faster. As soon as he reaches the top, the soldiers come out of the effect of Arcanis' weapon and the general finally realizes that the teenagers were telling the truth and decides to help them. Inside the ship, Fleech places the 3 of them in the absorption chamber and Arcanus puts on a power implant, entering the capsule where he will receive the energy shortly afterwards. With that done, Fleech turns on the extrapolator, which begins to suck the powers out of the neonatal trio. A few floors down, Reed finds a duct and asks Melanie to follow it until he finds the babies. This while he sabotages the ship's controls. Outside, 2 American fighter jets approach and try to communicate with Arcanus, asking him to follow them to a landing site or they will shoot him down. Not knowing how to fly the ship properly, Fleech starts moving it from side to side, forcing the fighters to move away. As there are civilians on board, the military ask for authorization to fire the missiles and wait for the general's order. Inside, Melanie manages to get past all the obstacles and into the laboratory, but only after Arcanus has already absorbed their powers, leaving the triplets exhausted. In the control room, Reed grabs a space gun and rends Fleech, ordering him to land the ship. Instead of waiting for Alien to do this, the boy starts shooting with the stun gun and short-circuits the control of the spaceship, causing the vehicle to start falling. As soon as they realize this, the fighters postpone firing the missiles in the hope that the teenagers inside will solve the problem, but Reed leaves Fleech in the control room and goes to help Melanie. Despite his best efforts, the alien is unable to regain control of the aircraft and ends up crashing right in the center of the city. As soon as the vehicle stops, Reed and the others are ejected into a capsule and the military approach to arrest Arcanus, but now the villain is super-powered and flies to the general. Thinking no one can stop him, the man says he's come to take over the planet and Jane says he'll have to go through her first. But now that's not so difficult. In addition to his army of robots, Arcanus now has the power of the triplets and can roll over tanks with his supersonic palm. When the military try to shoot back, the alien cockroach manages to block the projectiles with its force field. To the soldiers' dismay, Arcanus increases in size as if he were the Ant-Man and materializes 2 Mega Man busters, which he uses to shoot down the fighters. To help, Fleech grabs 2 ray guns and starts shooting at the humans, making the fight even more difficult. As the babies are still drowsy, Melanie says they should take them to a safe place, but Reed has another plan and runs out into the crossfire, almost getting hit several times. Despite this, he manages to get across the street safely and steals an ice cream cart. When the general and his army are about to surrender, Reed starts up the vehicle and begins to drive away in an attempt to distract him, but the soldiers don't take the opportunity. At a loss for what to do, the boy stops the car next to the capsule and tries to convince Arcanus to leave, saying that he's already got what he wants. Despite this, the villain wants to dominate the human race, and is even more determined to exterminate Lightspeed's bloodline. On hearing this, Reed says he won't allow him to touch the triplets, but the boy is soon captured by Arcanus, who begins to squeeze him, trying to crush his bones. Watching everything from the capsule, Kira is determined to protect her friend and finally awakens her powers, shooting lightning through her eyes, which hits the alien's hand. With her powers at maximum level, the girl uses her heat vision to break through Arcanis' barrier. Now that he doesn't have that obstacle, Kira starts flying and fires an electric pofo ray that causes Reed to fall, only to be saved by the Mega Titus at the last second. Almost the size of Godzilla, the boy takes no damage from Arcanis' robots and manages to destroy several of them, even more so with the help of Xander and the military who attack again. Together with his brothers, Xander materializes a robot body for himself and starts shooting at the enemies, eliminating the last remaining ones. While he does this, Melanie searches for Reed and tries to run over Fleech with the ice cream man's car, but they are stopped by Arcanus, who grabs the vehicle with his hands, throwing them away. Before they hit the ground, Kira manages to cushion the impact with telekinesis, saving them both. Now that they're safe, Reed says they should hit the chip in Arcanis' neck, and that's exactly what Kira does, firing several shots trying to hit the power implant. To fight back, the villain gives a supersonic palm that hits the Mega Titus, but the boy responds with a super burp that makes the alien almost fall over. With the help of Xander's giant bear, The children manage to take down Arcanus and Kira removes the implant from his neck. Finally, Reed destroys the chip and the villain loses all his powers, returning to his normal size. While the humans celebrate, Fleech tries to sneak out and ends up being caught by Melanie, who knocks him out with a kick. As if that wasn't enough, the girl grabs him by the neck and throws him from side to side. At that moment, Captain Lightspeed appears and offers to help, but the fight is already over and Titus and Xander are playing with Arcanus. Seeing his children, Lightspeed is happy to see that Kira has finally awakened her powers and has even learned to speak. Happy to see him again, Mega Titus grabs his father who asks if Reed still has a pacifier, as the triplets need to calm down. Having lost them all, the boy asks the DJ to play a Lionel Richie song, finally getting the three of them to calm down. Now that things are calmer, Melanie and Reed talk again about the science work, saying that they won't have time to do it. At this point, Lightspeed returns the pair's satellite communicator, which will be perfect for the job. With that done, the superhero thanks the teenagers and says that they saved the day in his place. Afterwards, Reed and Melanie say goodbye to the triplets and Lightspeed takes them back to Planet Master, where they will fight evil together. Even with all this confusion, the teenage couple manage to get a 10 at work and begin to grow closer, which makes Reed reduce the frequency with which he plays. But that's only until a gigantic shredder appears right in their backyard. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below, and if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.